So, where are we?
Ben?
Well, we're in Beijing, China,
Uh-huh.
in the capital of China.
Can you tell me your name?
Benjamin Graham.
Okay. And what are you?
I'm a cameraman and editor.
Okay. And you guys are partners?
Yeah, we are.
And you are?
My name is Noah Weinzweig. I'm a producer and an ex-cameraman. And Ben and I are co-owners in a company called Redgate Rentals, which is China's first Western-owned and Western-run camera rental company, specifically focused in digital cinema.
Are you the only guys with Red in China?
The only guys renting Red?
Yeah.
We are not the only ones renting Red. We have our competitors, but we're the only Western, well, we're the first Western-run, Western established rental company in China.
Okay. Why did you get into Red?
We got into Red because we believed in the idea that digital cinema camera that would be available for the masses, so we could get young and upcoming cinematographers that wouldn't normally have access to be able to shoot on this format. And since Noah and I both have shot on digital for many years, we were well used to the workflow, so going with it just seemed natural.
And how much of a shift is it to get into the raw workflow in the old video workflows?
Well, there was, for myself, I had a transition with shooting with P2 before, so that wasn't a huge shift. Acquisition was similar, but the post workflow was something that constantly was changing, so we were, staying up to date with what was going on with Red, what they were giving us as far as post workflow. But over the last year and a half, it's actually, started to level out and be, quite consistent.
Huh. So in terms of do you do most of the selling of the concept of shooting with you? Is that your role? What's your role?
My role at Redgate?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what my business card says is that I'm the Minister of Propaganda, and Ben is the digital commandante. We played off the kind of Red culture that Red has established within their own company, and we could have sort of played off that and thought it was a lot of fun. It's a new revolution, it's a new kind of format, it's a new camera, it's a new way a new philosophy of shooting, so we figured we might as well have fun with it.
Do you have to sell it?
Sell the technology?
Well, the concept, like you were saying, before there was P2, do you have to sell Red, or people want it, or what's the scenario?
People want it. People want it a lot, and I think in this country it's become something of a liberating technology to the Chinese because of financial factors. In the West, we've had the ability financially to shoot with film for a long time, and even today, or up until a few years ago when they stopped shooting shows like Friends, they were shot in 35mm, which is unheard of in Chinese society, that you would shoot a sitcom in 35 because it's such a kind of extravagant expense. I think digital cinema has taken root here really quickly because the Chinese saw the potential to shoot more and shoot what they want and continue shooting without fear of the financial consequences that you would get with film.
And how much training up do you... I mean, okay, you get a client, they heard of Red, they want Red. Do they understand what they're getting into, and do you have to help them through the process?
Well, some clients, yes, and some clients, no. I mean, initially when we started the company, there was a steep learning curve because there was not many Reds in China and only a few in Beijing. So we had a lot of new clients that had never used it. They'd maybe seen it, when Red would come over and do a demo day, get to show people the cameras, but they've never actually used it. So there was a steep learning curve, but rapidly they got very comfortable with it. And we do send out a DIT with every camera on every job that's fully competent in the camera and understands everything. So they're there to assist the DOP, make sure that there's no issues. New clients, there is quite a bit of learning for them to do, but it's the clients that keep coming back, they're quite happy with it, and they get to know the camera quite well.
Did the Chinese have HD TV? Do they actually broadcast on HD?
No, they don't.
So why do they want HD?
they want to shoot. Most of the TV series here are shot in HD, shot on Sony's, on HD Cam, or on Panasonic's DVC Pro HD, or the new ABC. They want an acquisition in HD. They want a high quality acquisition, but their broadcast is still in SD. The talk is that in the coming years there will be an HD broadcast signal, but I think there's some licensing issues with royalties and whatnot.
And how about turning on the slightly older generation that was into film? I mean,
well, that's the sort of beauty of Red, is that they've been able to transition the traditional acquisition kind of ethos and philosophy and technical, all the technical philosophies are transitioned really well with the Red. So we use PL lenses so people understand that the accessories look the same. They're matte boxes. We're still using NDs. We're still using tripods and heads. And camera assistants still come on and follow focus. And the depth of field is virtually, if not, it's exactly the same as 35. So I think a lot of traditional DPs who started their careers in 35 or 16 were able to make that transition very comfortably. And that's, I think, one of the real key market strengths of Red, because Sony hasn't been able to pull that off because they're video, and they haven't been able to communicate properly with traditional filmmakers.
okay, you've kind of
What happened?
worked into a kind of question I was going to go for, which is like, so you've got Red and you've got Raw, and I was going to say one intermediate question that I'd like to return to is whether people get Raw, get the idea that you can even change your ASA rating back in post, which is a bit of a
your white balance. Your
bit
color
of a head
temperature can be
spinner for a
adjusted.
film guy.
It does. We've worked with some DOPs, Western DOPs as well, that have never shot with it, never shot digital cinema, and it is something that they have a hard time with understanding because they're not used to that. But once you show them, and the best thing is to take the DOP and show them either on a laptop if you don't have a post suite, but actually take them in and show them what's possible, and then it totally opens up a new world for them of flexibility on set, and then also not worrying so much that they don't have a chance to change that in post if there is any problems.
So you wouldn't necessarily get into like F-35s and Alexas and all that stuff.
Well, F-35s, no.
No, Alexa we think is a good technology. We think it's going to be something that people.
So you would
here-
consider getting into that?
Yeah, we have plans to get into that.
I think to simplify the answer to that is that I don't think we're interested in any tape-based medium at all.
We're digital acquisition completely. We don't have
Okay.
anything tape-based.
Okay.
And that's not to say that we don't think the F-35 is a great camera. In fact, I think it's a fantastic camera. But from a price point and in terms of what we're doing as a company, we don't want to see tape ever again.
Yeah, we have the only tape out we do is for SD digital Betacam delivery and clients that need an HD out. But everything we do from acquisition through the post here is all digital.
Okay, so a celebration of that. But there's a thing about the Alexa though that the Red, if I understand it correctly, doesn't do, which is this thing about high dynamic range. In other words, taking the same frame twice and taking the best of both the low exposure and the high exposure. Or can you set that to do that?
Well, the new Epic, the new Red, the Epic will have an HDR mode as well as Scarlet, and they haven't released what that actually means. Whether it does do an HDR exposure in camera and a composite, or what exactly it does, but it does have an HDR mode.
Oh.
So the dynamic range, there's been much debate online recently over the last few months because Alexa, Ari's brought out their dynamic range test and Red's brought out theirs, and I think there's a huge heated debate about dynamic range and latitude and the two terms and how they work. But I think between Ari shooting RAW and Epic, those are going to be the two benchmarks in the coming
Okay,
years.
when you say online, what's your online? Because there's Digital Cinema Society, the CML, Red User. What's your when you say online? What's
Well, Red User is one of the biggest online forums. There's cinematography, but really a lot of the stuff goes through Red User. Ari is on there as well, and they're posting their stuff. Ari has their own blogs on there.
Ari?
Ari, yeah, they have their own blogs on there.
Oh, okay.
Digital site as well.
Okay.
They put up a site dedicated to Ari Digital, so it's D21, and also, but really now it's all about Alexa. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So I got a broad one
Okay.
for you, which is more about. So you've been here for 10 and 15 years respectively, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you've seen a China that was from before, and you've seen digitality, whatever the hell that is, hit.
Yeah.
So what has the digital thing done in the time that you've been here? What's it done to the Asian mentality, and specifically China?
What's it done? I mean, I think it's liberated an entire generation, or maybe 2 generations, and it's given them the means to go out and express themselves, creativity. What am I? We're going to stop that, right? It's liberated an entire generation, if not 2, and allow. And,
okay.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I need another beer or one less. I'm not sure.
I mean, really, what it is like when I know when I first came to China, it was DV. You know, DV had just come out. It was the standard. We had like DV Cam. We had you know Canon XL1.
But digital. We were digital though, right?
It was digital.
Sort of.
Well, it was digital, but it was digital. Yeah, but on a tape. So you still had, you didn't have that loss of generations like you had with analog. But you still, back in 2000, 1999, you still had digital Betacam, you had DV. HD was still just coming out, so it wasn't available. It wasn't until 2003 that you started to see the HD cameras start coming out here. And about 2005 they really started to take off.
Did you see a prior thing to this 5 years earlier, before DV? High 8 or getting over here?
Not really. I mean, actually, I was originally back in 2003, 2004 when I came up with the idea to open up a rental house. It was because I was hired by a Canadian company, a producer of a show called Regenesis, and they were shooting their 2nd or 3rd season, going into their 3rd season. They had been shooting on film. And then they decided, there was a production meeting, they decided maybe they would go HD on the 3rd season. And I was going to do some establishing shots and with a body double here, because one of their episodes was based in China, but they shot in Toronto. And so I geared up to shoot film. They had hired me to shoot 35mm. Then just about 2 days before I was going to go shoot, they called me and said, "Stop everything. We're going to go HD. Wait." So a week later they confirmed, and then that forced me into this world called HD. And I went around Beijing looking for HD, which ended up being the F900 in this particular situation. It took me 5 days and 5 different rental houses to cobble together what I thought was an appropriate HD package. And I went down to southern China and I shot with a body double for 3 days. Completely nervous and sweating more than you usually would in 35-degree weather, and ended up somehow exposing. And by the way, my waveform monitor, which was the first time I've ever used one, broke the first day. So not that I even knew how to use it properly, but
sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds right, exactly. The 27,000 pin Panasonic thing broke. Anyway, I ended up exposing the stuff pretty decently. The producer was happy and the show was very happy, and that was my first experience with HD. But it was because of that experience I said to myself, hey, if it took me a week and 5 different rental houses to put together one package, there's an opportunity here in China, and that's how Redgate eventually came to form. But that was my first experience with HD, and I later found out China's kind of around that time started to experiment with HD, and it was mysterious and wonderful, and it was a buzzword, but it very, very quickly dissipated when 4K came around. I mean, that just changed all the rules. It's amazing.
Okay. Well, I've got a question here that kind of leads from that, which is it's about that whole thing about the film look, and somebody once said that film was a long distance telephone call, whereas video was a phone call from a box around the corner. So I'm just wondering what the kind of raw 4K aesthetic is. I mean, is there an HD aesthetic? Is there?
No, because a lot of the look ends up coming from the lenses that we use. And that's why people have been using lens adapters with cinema lenses, because of the look that those particular lenses have and the contrast and color. You know, and then in post nowadays, there's so much processing done that, you know, it can look as far away from clean and clear 4K capture, you know, as it was been shot on a small HD camera.
I mean, in London at the moment, there are certainly like there's kind of, they're not exactly old school. They're young guys, but they're kind of brought up in the old school way. But what they're doing is they're using f/35s, and what they're hunting out is old 70s lenses, anything but anything, to do something to the clear thing.
Yeah, there is a lot of guys out there that are looking for these. You know, they're quite popular. You know, there are a lot of, especially the 16mm engineer lenses. You know, and older cooks, old Pancros.
What about Chinese kit? There must be some wild stuff.
Well, there are some crazy lenses here that are made in China, but you know, even the guys who are selling them don't recommend using them unless you have to. I don't know, maybe there might be projector lenses rehoused to PL mount, but do Chinese? Now this is, I really don't mean this in a racist way, and I've got to be careful how I put this, but there's a kind of different physiology going on, kind of, about perception. I mean, a lot of Europeans and Americans just don't see the difference between film and video unless you bang them on the head and say, look for that, and they go, oh, I see what you mean. Is the developing consciousness about film, video, digital, people seeing this, or what? The Chinese, they do see it. Unfortunately, a lot of their stuff that's broadcast and created for TV, the timeline and the budgets are quite low, so the production quality is low. It's still HD, and a lot of the stuff that they see, the masses see, is very video-y. But they do have a lot of movies and a lot of cinemas, and they do watch. You know, piracy is quite rampant here, and access to Western movies. And it's not, you know, you can find more foreign movies here than I could find in Canada. You know, I go to the video store, I can go down here, I've got more French movies, more English movies, Spanish, Portuguese, you know, from Korea, from all over the world. So they've got quite a good library of movies from all over the world that they're used to watching. And so I think a lot of them can tell the difference between this video look and this film look. And that's why we've had, you know, DSLRs, lens adapters, and, you know, the red digital cinema is so popular now, and everybody's asking for it.
Yeah. You see Noah bursting.
No, I got here I've been here on and off for 15 years, and my first year in China was in 1995, and I remember watching television at that time and flipping through the channels. This is before I knew how to speak and read and write Chinese, but the exposure, I mean, never mind the content and the way they shot and all that, but the exposure itself was either completely under or outrageously overexposed. And I've noticed this throughout my 15 years in China, but somewhere around 5 to 7 years ago there was a shift, and things started to get exposed properly, and framing, and instead of everything being on the shoulder, they started to transfer their cameras to tripods, and they started to use the camera more dynamically. They started to play with depth of field better. They started to get more creativity. They started, technical prowess increased. And now, as a rental company, and being Westerners, it's an interesting perspective, but our clients for this company are 99% Chinese. So we are on the front line, first-hand contact with today's Chinese directors.
Is there a Beijing film school?
There is.
I mean, it's a stupid question. Of course there is.
Beijing Film Academy.
And the film museum's just up the street.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So do you have any kind of relationship with them?
Not directly, but indirectly we do see.
Do they have red?
One or two, I think. Yeah, they have about 2 that they get to play with.
I mean, the export into a small country like the UK is you'll see, I don't know, Hero or help me here, some big Chinese movies. Red Sorghum,
Raise the
Red Lantern, all that stuff. Now that is severely beautiful on a kind of aesthetic level. So are those kind of makers, because they must be the very top layer of the makers over here,
yeah,
are those guys embracing digital? No?
Zhang Yimou, most of the films you just mentioned were made by Zhang Yimou,
Yeah.
who the Chinese themselves say that Zhang Yimou makes films for Westerners, not for Chinese people.
Oh, right.
Zhang Yimou has not, that I know of, worked with the Red, maybe on a commercial or something like that, but he works with F-35.
I mean, it was deeply hot about 5 years ago for every director who's worth their salt to shoot a digital movie. Like, you weren't a big Hollywood director unless, you know, like Michael Mann and I can't remember the one with Tom Cruise and whoever, but Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Which
Collateral, that's it. Which had
That
its
was my
moments
yeah.
of looking incredibly video.
That was the Viper, because he likes to shoot at a faster frame rate and push
Right.
it at night.
There were F900s and Vipers on that one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 2 DPs as well.
Yeah.
Right.
How about
Oh,
that?
what's his name? Bebby was on that. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
All right.
Okay, so we won't go on for too much longer, but I've got a couple of last ones here, and the last one's open ended. So I was talking in one interview with Mitch Gross in New York at City Tech, and he tells me that they're working on a piece of kit where they're basically, or at least they're doing the preliminary investigations on some kind of lens fitting that fits your hand. Your hand is balanced like a Steadicam might be. You've got a fibre optic pathway which then goes wireless. So you're basically operating the camera and the recording's happening wherever. So they're getting out of they're thinking of getting out of the hardware at the front end. So which is wild. I mean, why not just have an implant in the brain? Let's just go for it. Just have a lens in the middle of your forehead, like Max Headroom in the 80s. But what my question is next 5-10 years in China, what do you think the development's going to be? I'm not asking for mad, crazy, you know, what the camera kit's going to be, but okay, we're here. They're plugging into this stuff. Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, I mean, the question you mean coming from China or?
Well, the Chinese/Asian world's grasp of digitality and where you think it might go.
I think it will dominate the landscape, but I think that the technological drive will still come from the West and will be adopted here. I don't think there'll be a lot of indigenous technological developments coming from China. They'll be adopted on a massive scale.
Okay, and you think you mentioned a growth of aesthetic. What was it? A growth of aesthetic. There was an aesthetic change where, you know, exposure got good and framing got good and all the rest of it. Do you how do you see that developing? About Chinese TV. I mean, how's it all going to?
It's been, you know, the arts has been really crushed for so long here over the last 20 years that now there's a boom. There's a boom in everything here in the arts. You know, there's art galleries everywhere. There's, you know, they're opening up the censorship a lot more, and you've got more and more people that are getting into photography and into video and into filmmaking. The demand for the technology is growing really rapidly, and you know, 3D here is really taking off, and the amount of new cinemas that are going in, even all digital cinemas that are going in.
Right.
I think it's going to be a very big industry in China.
Okay. 1.4 billion people with a massive cultural, you know, requirement. The physical infrastructure is going in right now. So as Ben said, the theater infrastructure was almost nothing. I mean, when I got here, there were a couple of theaters and they still smoked in them, for God's sakes. And now you go into Chinese cinemas in Beijing and they look like any other cinema in any other part of the world, except that they still don't have salty popcorn, which is very offensive to the Western crowds here in China.
Or licorice.
Yeah, or licorice. I don't have a problem with that.
So my last question is the one where you need a moment to think, I think, because it's like, what do you want? Is there anything you want to add? I mean, given that, you know, there's been a bunch of interviews with people that are either, you know, very heavy HD consultant types that are developing, right the way through to completely aesthetic types, right the way through to film and video theorists, games people. I mean, is there anything to add to the mix from the perspective of where you're working, where you're living, how you see it might go? I mean, is this the height of the bubble? Is the bubble going to get bigger? Has the bubble burst? Where are we going, if anywhere? Anything to add to the whole mix? And it's okay if there isn't.
Well, it's a big open-ended question, as you established.
Would you like me to turn off for a bit to think on this one?
Nah.
Okay.
It's only digital. It's cheap. It's not like you're shooting film.
Fade to black.
And it's pretty compressed, I might add as well, so we could just be going on
Horribly
forever.
compressed.
I mean, from our perspective here in China, I think we're in a very interesting position to not only be involved with a digital revolution, which is happening globally, but coincidentally, it also is coinciding with China's, revolution in content creation and creative expression, and the easing of government regulation. And I think so we're experiencing two revolutions simultaneously. For us, I mean, from an anthropological kind of perspective, it's fascinating to be here. And from a technological perspective, it's fascinating and kind of like a race that will never end, constantly having to deal with new technology coming into the market and spending more money and dealing with our clients' requirements for new technology. Not necessarily because they need it, but because they feel they need to have it. Because there's so much hype in the digital world that as a rental company it's tough, and our clients frankly get wrapped up in hype. And I'm not sure what that's like in the West, but I think in China, as soon as a new thing comes in, I need that, I want it. They don't necessarily have the budget, but as a camera rental company, we have to.
We're definitely seeing this everywhere. Everywhere I'm talking to people, definitely, because the old thing about, like, what have you got to sell? I have newness to sell.
Right. Exactly. We've got a new shovel and a new pick, so you can go out and make your goal.
I mean, I did want to get into the whole political thing because I think
the camera position might have just changed.
I might just fade out before that happens.
Okay.
Well, just in case I come back on, can you just check that?
No, you've moved it.
Yeah, I know I have now because I fucked it up and I got
You
excited.
didn't, but you was having you on.
All right, so we may just. Oh, really? Fuck.
What's that?
All right, we'll assume that bit's gone, right?
Okay.
I know I said I wasn't going to edit this, but I have actually done a little bit of editing before. But I mean, I'll fade out on that where we got before it went weird. But is there anything that you want to add? And it's perfectly okay if not. So I'll just restate the question.
About politics.
What I was going to say about the politics I mean, I've actually been involved in making programs about Chinese politics like 20 years ago. And for me, it would be a foolish gesture to have any criticism or any kind of attitude to it, because I don't even think the Chinese Communist Party would necessarily have a clue what's going on. I shouldn't even be saying this. So bearing all of that in mind, is there anything else to add?
Well, for us, like, the politics don't play much of an issue with it, because we've got producers that come to us with a project, but we've also got the DOPs that come on, and the DOPs want one thing and the producers to have a budget for another. So it's a balance of, technically giving, the DOP what he wants. He wants the new technology, but then accommodating the production's budget. So the costing is quite low over here compared to the West.
Is your sales point the DOP, the producer? Who's the hit? Who's the
producer makes the decision.
Yeah.
And the DOPs bring the production here, and we have good relationships with lots of DOPs. We also have good relationships with producers, so it's a mix of. But it's really the DOP. He wants the equipment. He's got certain bits that he wants, and we have. We pride ourselves in having the best and latest kit, especially when it comes to the Red One. So a lot of our clients come back for that, but it's also a balance of meeting the needs of the production.
And the context of all that is basically your initial thing about getting into it, which was like trying to find kit was really hard.
Yeah.
So to have a kind of one-stop shop makes it really, really easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a hard country, effectively.
Well, the reality is that China didn't function on a market-based economy, and because of governmental restrictions, it was impossible for a market-driven kind of rental company to develop in China until recently. And so, we have over 100 years of filmmaking culture in the West. China has 100 years of filmmaking experience, but they didn't make too many films in that 100 years. And we thought, to be a professional. They don't necessarily have the philosophies or the experience to create a service-oriented rental company that understands the importance of equipment maintenance and really good service and being there. We have to hold a lot of hands of our clients. We have to do a lot of, especially when the Red first came out, our 50% of our job was education.
So that was it. I mean, I asked a question earlier about training and stuff like that, but you have to do a lot of service support.
There is,
stuff
and especially on set. Like we've got at least one person on that's trained by us on set at all times. Sometimes two if the production needs it. And the camera is not really the biggest issue. It's more the workflow as well the post stuff that they need. A lot of them they'll just show up afterwards and what do I do now? And they don't even have hard drives. They don't even realize they need to go buy, or we have to advise them on which hard drives to buy, because in China you can go buy cheap ones, but those will die and there goes your footage. And for them to actually understand that their $100,000 project is on these hard drives, it takes a little bit of education for them to really grasp that, and don't cheap out on buying storage for your data.
It's dangerous for us too, because if we don't educate our clients and they show up without hard drives, or they show up with the wrong hard drives, and then something goes wrong, they will blame us.
Regardless if it's our fault.
We've been blamed for, let's see, batteries at the airport got stopped at security check, and we got blamed for that. Because of China's aviation regulations don't allow this or that, or they bumped into the wrong person that day. We got blamed for that. We got blamed for
a 3-camera shoot where they had different apertures on each camera and different filters, and expected to stitch them all together into one wide shot.
Yeah. My favorite was when we had a Western DIT, and they went to Western Sichuan, which was politically charged at that time because of
the earthquake.
The earthquake and riots in Tibet, and they wouldn't allow the Western DIT into that area. We got blamed for the political circumstances of China because he was Western.
So in all of this, I mean, facilities in a sense is a dangerous place to be in any country, because somebody's got to be blamed. I mean, someone's got to be blamed.
We try to minimize the blame.
But there's the bringing what interested me in that bit was the kind of service. You're having to import a Western service mentality to make damn sure that your backside is covered.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, by that rationale, we shouldn't be in this business at all. It's absolutely ridiculous. Our clients don't actually, I'll just be completely honest with you. I mean, it's not in the Chinese filmmaking culture for most people to come in and prep and test a package before. They order it on the phone and it shows up.
Some of them don't even come up and pick it up. They send a driver and then he picks it and takes it away. So sometimes we never even see the DOP.
That's fingers crossed. A lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, that's why our insurance policy, both in terms of the maintenance and what it means, the security of the camera from a physical standpoint, is it going to get stolen? Is it going to get damaged? Is our DITs? Our DITs are mandatory. They go with the package. It's part of the price. It's built into the price.
They're not just in charge of backing up the data. They're also in charge of educating the DOP and keeping an eye on the equipment.
Which is a fine balance. But it's a fine balance.
It's a very, very big job.
It is, but we can't actually. We have to be careful again, because our DITs go out there and they know how to, navigate the menu systems. They know how to troubleshoot the camera. Because when Red first came out, it was a nightmare as a rental company. I was getting phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the camera's died again. It's rebooted 6 times. What's wrong with your camera? And I had to keep explaining to them, it's not what's wrong with our camera, it's what's wrong with their camera.
But it was a revolutionary thing.
It was. I think a lot of them just didn't appreciate what they had in their hands, and there was almost with the Red. There's so many options in it as far as navigation, the menus and different settings, and there was this big issue about the camera overheating when it first came out. And we've had. Some of them will actually turn off the fan, because you can actually turn the fan off inside the camera instead of turning it to auto or low. They'll actually physically turn it off and be shooting out in like 38 degrees. And then the camera shuts down and they think, oh, it's just, the camera's got a problem. And, then we say, well, you've gone in and shut all this stuff off. You've created the problem.
So it's an extreme camera in an extreme environment, in extreme conditions.
Extreme clients.
Well, thankfully, Reds solve most of the problems, so we don't get those calls anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were still getting those calls, I doubt very much I'd want to be in this business.
I mean, you're using Build 30 at the moment, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you went there because I mean, some people are not going there. Yeah.
We've been up to date with every build that's come out.
Was that not dangerous on the level of
Well, we've
almost
had-
beta kit out there? And
I bricked one camera actually with an upgrade
In Kuwait.
In Kuwait.
On
Yeah, the golden. I mean, I was doing my own production, so it was my issue. But I did have a camera actually crash and be unable to boot and had to be sent back to California to get fixed. It was a bit frustrating, but then, that's the way it is. It's always been a beta camera. It never was a final build, and that's what's great about the way that company works is that they've released something into the wild and taking feedback from the people using it to make it better. And that's why Epic is going to be great, because it's going to take everything that the Red 1 has taught everybody and be solid when it gets released.
Huh.
we're really positive on Red, and we're happy to continue to grow with them and develop with them.
Even regardless of the difficult conditions and the difficult clients and all the rest of it, you're still right there with it.
Yeah, no, we believe in Red because I mean they are a game changer. They've come in with a completely different background, from the apparel background, but they've come in and we like their strategy, and we like the honesty here. We even like the delays. Even actually, we do like the delays because it gives us a little bit of. It takes the pressure
another
off.
6 months of people being willing to use the Red and not asking for where's that Epic
Yeah.
or that Scarlet.
Which is great. So, but even with the philosophies, the financial structures that if you trade in this and trade in that and get a credit here and get a credit there, that's a terrific strategy that a lot of companies don't even consider. So we, as a rental company, we've invested a lot of money in Red, and we're invested in their development, and I think their technology is going to continue to go forward. We're going to move with them.
Yeah, that we wouldn't have started a rental company if it wasn't for them, because all of the other cameras, it's not something. It didn't have the excitement. It didn't have the idea behind it that we believed in, and I think that if it wasn't for Red, we never would have started.
Yeah. I can't imagine doing this with any other
With a
technology
Sony,
company,
no.
or Panasonic, or
No.
no. But we're psyched about the Alexa.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think that's great.
I don't know how do we do compared to.
You did good, but I'm going to get that mosquito off your head.
I don't have much.